So, we're gonna roll through Tenebrae.
Not before visiting the royal tomb at Cartanica.
You're sure you're up to that?
The wounds have mended. Eyesight's a matter of time.
What the hell is wrong with you?
What?
We're not stopping in Tenebrae. You need to grow up and get over it.
I am over it. I'm here, aren't I?
Maybe when you're not too busy moping, you can look around and give a shit about someone worse off than you.
Let go of me.
How's that ring fit you? You rather carry it around than wear it? She gave her life so you could do your duty, not so you could sit around feeling sorry for yourself.
You don't think I know that?
You don't! Ignis took one for you too. And for what?
Enough, Gladio!
You think you're a king, but you're a coward.
Shut up! Don't do this! I get it, all right? I get it!
Then get a grip. Pull your head out of your ass already.
Knocked!
Leave him.
And welcome back to part 28 of Final Fantasy XV. Today we're on the train that will ultimately stop at Gralia. Gralia being the capital of Niflheim, and by proxy the Niflheim Empire, because at the end of all this we do need to retrieve the crystal that they stole from the Insomnian Empire. From us guys, as Crown City folk. But along the way we'll be making a few stops at Cartonica, because there's a royal tomb rumoured to be there. There's Tenebrae we'll be passing, but as Gladio kind of stated at us, we're not stopping there, even though it's the home of Lunafreya and Ravus, so it might be a good idea to stop there for one reason or another. And then we'll also be passing through a frozen wasteland, so you know something's going to happen through there. But I digress. This train section here is rather slow, and it gives you a chance to just explore, talk about, and see what there is to see. Because you're going to be spending a while on the train, so it gives you time to get used to it whilst you're on your travel. And it also gives me time to talk about a few events from the past couple parts. The most important one being Lunafreya and her character, and how I feel she wasn't handled as well as she could have been in this story. And my main reason for saying that is, with the exception of the film, she doesn't have much screen time in this game. Nowhere near enough to really justify and create an honest connection between Noctis and Lunafreya. Like, it's hard to believe they're lovers when all they talk about and all they talk to is through a notepad and odd messages saying see you soon, essentially. And them giving like a passing wink when it was during the big talk at the end. And that's it. And then she does the thing for Noctis to help give the Leviathan a fair chance, to help get the blessing for Noctis, and then that's it. It's a bit like, okay, I was like, it's Cartanica, not Cartonica. Because there's Tenebrae up there. I do show the map. There's the frozen wasteland, and then there's Niflheim in the corner. But Gralia and the Zegnortus is waiting for us at the end. The Zegnortus being the keep, which is housing our crystal. But yeah, I think, especially when you know, like, if you look into the development history of it, and it was quite well known, for a long time in development, Noctis was going to have a different love interest. And when you look at some of the old footage of when this game was Final Fantasy Versus 13, or some of the really early 15 footage, you can see that they had much more with this other character called Stella than they did with Luna. Luna was just kind of shoehorned in to then become the love interest, when Stella was the one that actually had a relationship with Noctis. When you look at some of the old footage, things like that, like going and seeing the sights with him, seeing all these cool stuff, and being really full of life and energetic, and kind of, to be fair, Stella's character looks like a cross between Luna and Iris, because she has a bit more personality and a bit more goofiness than Iris, while still being a bit more clean cut and professional, I think is the only way to put it. Like Luna Freya. Anyway, once you've seen all you want to see, you can sit down at the next to Iggy and Prompto, and it will skip the rest of the train journey, so you don't have to witness it all. You can watch it all if you really want to, but there's no real need to right now. On the second time, it's definitely worth to, because there's a lot of loot on the train that just casually ends up there. And that counts as a quest finished for some reason, just waiting on the train. There's 2 side quests here as well you can do. When the game first came out, there was only one, but they added the other one very late into the post-launch cycle. It's just something extra to do in Chapter 10. This is the one you can normally do. There's 5 baby chocobos. 4 or 5. Yep. Yeah. And they're scattered around, and I've only ever found all but one. I've never been able to find the last one, so I don't end up doing that side quest. And the other one was a new one added, but rather annoyingly, you can only do it during the daytime, and it's involving the dungeon we're about to enter. But when you enter the dungeon, it enters at night. So the side quest is kind of inconvenient for you to want to do, because it's taking pictures to certain landmarks. But the team will argue, even if you can clearly see it, that it can't be seen unless there's light, so it needs to be during the day. But we're going to get to the next dungeon anyway, because the next dungeon is probably the weakest part of the game in my opinion. Like, a lot of people will hammer on about Chapter 13 when we get to that, but I don't have many issues with Chapter 13. Chapter 10, though, this main dungeon we're going to enter, I have a lot of problems with it, because it's clashing between realism and storytelling and entertainment and fun. And I get it, it's a very important plot point. Ignis is blind, like one of most important and necessary team members, like vital parts to our crew. He is blind, he is essentially useless in combat for now. But they restrict it and enforce it in the story by making it that you can't run ahead. You have to walk, you have to go at a walking pace throughout the entire dungeon, and it's not a small dungeon either. And so it becomes a very frustrating drag of a dungeon. This entire dungeon is just this part, and the video is 49 minutes long, and it could have been like 25, 26 minutes or something along, at least much shorter than that, if it wasn't for the fact I have to walk everywhere. I do go right to the end of the train on both sides to look for items, and instead of walking back I just cut, because I save you the hassle, it's just a run. There's also a side cart you can explore as well, and in the side cart it's a canteen if you need food, since you can't get it from Ignis really right now, and also a resting point if you want to tally up your XP and, you know, skip the day. Also worth mentioning, you'll start to notice it, and I'm going to make a note of it now because it is the first time you really start to notice it. It's going to become evening and then eventually nighttime sooner than what you're used to. Because it's currently only 2 o'clock or 14, so 2 PM, and the sun is already setting. That's stupid early for the sun to be setting. But that is something worth keeping in mind. The demons that prowl the nighttime is going to start sooner and drag out for longer. I'm not going to explain why that is, because as far as you know, it's just the seasons. But this game is 2 years old, so some of you probably already know why. But over here's the canteen I was on about.
Grab some food before you go?
You can also talk, obviously, like usual, but it's not that much to show, because it's just, there's a side quest here, and that's how far away the actual dungeon you're going to is.
You boys be having?
And you can have a set dinner course here, which boosts your HP, but that's it. Your only other option are going to be cup noodles, because they're brought items. You literally just put them on the fire for a bit and they're done. You don't actually have to cook them per se. So if you go camping during the dungeon, cup noodles are going to probably be your way to go. Or anything else that could be brought and just put on the fire without any other need, sort of thing. So, like, cheap do-it-yourself food sort of thing.
Well, did you find them?
I can't say they just called her the Choker Lover. Like, they didn't really try giving her any kind of other name. It's just the Choker Lover.
You boys are heading into the mine.
Over here you can get some pretty high-class weaponry, including the Blood Sword, which we don't need because our weapon's stronger. The Thunderbolt, which we've already got one. A Wyvern Lance, Flame Guns, a Hero Shield, which is pretty beastly for For Gladiolas, it's pretty beastly, so I end up getting it. And a few other things like a titanium bangle if you want an extra health boost. A talisman for the magic, knight's anklet for other things. And there's a lot of good equipment here is what I'm getting at. But at the same time, I'd say don't worry too much if you can't get some of the high tier equipment now. Because there will be other opportunities to get it. Like, it's not like this is your only chance. There'll be many more opportunities to get it. And even so, there's even better equipment you can buy in the main game coming later on. So, if you can't afford it, I'd say don't really worry about it and just get the next tier up when it eventually becomes available, because there are challenging moments for certain, but nothing you can't overcome with basic equipment right now. So I head up the other side of the train whilst very depressing and simple music plays, and I get it because it's a fitting time. It's a very dark time in the game, and I like the fact that they managed to do something dark with the story without just killing off one of the main characters. Yeah, they kill off Luna Freya, which is still, like, that's dark in itself, killing off a character, it always is. But they managed to make an emotional impact from the player, at least in my opinion, by blinding Ignis. They didn't kill off Ignis or anything like that, they blinded him, making him unusable and almost worthless. And for a character that's extremely worthwhile and extremely helpful for the whole adventure, for him to suddenly be almost non-existent has a similar emotional effect than what would happen. Oh, hi Core. This is where I think Core's just telling us, okay, this is where the royal tomb I found was, because Core did say he was looking for royal tombs in our stead many moons ago, if you remember, like the first few parts of the game. And Core, like, he makes a joke saying hold your nose because we're going into a swamp, but I can't help but feel like that joke was in poor taste. Like, we've had a dark situation and Core's just a man popping a joke like, But over here is Prompto.
That should take us straight down to the mine.
Yeah.
Wonder if the tomb's inside.
Should be, Prompto. Otherwise it'll be a waste of chapter 10. There's also a quest down here. Is this the yeah, this is the guy who asks us to take pictures. The new side quest. There's nothing down there, which is odd because of how they designed it. You'd think they'd put an item on the other end of that.
Help me out here.
And here it is. What he will ask you to do is take pictures of select areas inside the dungeon we're about to head into. You only have this chapter to do it, because once you head back on the train after getting the royal tomb, you'll never be returning here. And so any side quests you don't do here will be cancelled essentially. They will stop existing.
But you do.
Similarly, any side quest you started in Altissia, you'll notice has now vanished from your quest log.
3 shots of that big machine while you're at it. I also need one of the abandoned
The only things that won't vanish are hunts, because you can start hunts in Altissia, because there is a hunter's lodge in Altissia you can find. So, and they will still stay, because post-game you can still go back to Altissia in, let's say in post-game, and do those hunts. But the side quests directly tied to either Luna Freya or Noctis surrounding it are completely vanished, because you can't do them anymore because Luna's dead, obviously. Right, like, here's the last chocobo I can find. Like I said, but I have no clue where the last one shows up. And eventually give up trying to find it. Because at first I thought, oh, maybe you could just go up the other side. No, the lift won't take you up and the stairs are blocked. This is the end of the road for what you can explore. That's not the dungeon. Because you can't access this lift from here either. You can only access the other one that takes you into the dungeon. And unfortunately you can't sprint in this area because it considers it an indoor environment for some stupid reason. So you can't go into a sprint, so that's why you're seeing me jump or roll everywhere, because it's just faster. Like video game 101, rolling or jumping is always the faster way to travel.
Ready to set out?
I decided to take Ignis along. I've never clicked leave Ignis behind, and I can assume he will force his way through anyway, because he seems like he's a very persistent bugger. But I decided to take him with us. Well, voluntarily take him with us, because I think I'm pretty sure I've looked into it a little bit, but that was a long time ago. So forgive me if my memory's wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's one of those decisions where if you say turn against it, the rest of the team will eventually push it on, and he will end up in anyway. But this is how it works. This dungeon is dark and a bleak swamp, so you already know this is not going to be interesting or fun to explore. But the main reason that you have to work through it, and the main reason it fucking drags, You cannot, as it now is telling us, cannot leave Ignis behind.
As best I can.
If you go, he will always move at a slight walking speed because he's using a walking stick to find himself around, and it's rocky terrain. It makes sense realistically in the story for him to be moving slow as hell. But if you run on ahead, the team will stop you. And they will shout and moan at you and spin the camera and just be a pain in the ass. You have to work at Ignis' speed, which makes this entire dungeon heavily drag. Because if you persevere and try and push on, it will literally just teleport you back. This is especially annoying when you're looking for loot, because you have to walk over to the loot like so, and then I have to turn around and walk back because of it. And so yeah, as I said, this to me is the worst chapter in the game because it's the compromise. I never like games that compromise genuine fun for the sake of realism or story. There's a time and a place for them, like The Walking Dead or any Telltale game, before they went under by just repeating the cycle, demanding too much and picking up as many brands as they possibly could, and then didn't pay severance, bastards. But there's a way of doing it, but this isn't it. It's the same reason why I don't like The Last of Us. It's the same reason I didn't like Uncharted 4. The moment you sacrifice gameplay for realism is the moment I stop caring. Because games aren't about realism. They're about having fun, for God's sake. You can have realistic elements in it to make it more believable, but people play video games mostly to have escapism from reality, not to be a part of it again. And at least for me especially, games like The Last of Us, who were so heavy on their realism and story, they made the gameplay sluggish and shit. Or Uncharted 4 that did the exact same thing, despite the fact the first 3 Uncharted games had perfect gameplay and were really fun to go back and play into. So Uncharted 4 wasn't fun to me. The story was great, but I'd never play it again. And this chapter just sucks, in my opinion, for the same reasons. They've spent too much time making it work for the story and realistic. But this isn't fun. As soon as I jog 5 steps forward, I get bitched at by Gladio. You have to work at a stupidly slow pace. And being forced to work at a snail's pace for the sake of realism isn't fun and not worth my time. And this is why I feel this chapter is the weakest in the game. And so a lot of people bitch at chapter 13 and say chapter 13 is a bad chapter, but I like chapter 13 because it's still solid gameplay. Yeah, they restrict what tools you have, which we'll get when we get to it, because I'm not going to spoil it now. But they do it well, they do it effectively, and they do have fun with it, and I enjoy chapter 13. I have issues with chapter 13, which we'll get to when we get to it, don't get me wrong. But I do enjoy it a hell of a lot more than this chapter. Chapter 10 is just that one dragging chapter that I wish was handled better. Like, I'd much rather the plot be we leave Ignis behind, and it's the emotional turmoil of there only being a team of 3, of having to work without Ignis when they're used to working as a team of 4, instead of it being the emotional turmoil of having to work at a snail's pace because Iggy's blind and he's decided to come with you. And I can make these criticisms because there's been games that have incorporated realism without criticizing, without demolishing entertainment and gameplay for the sake of it. Like any game from the PS1 and PS2 that prioritized story. They didn't care if it affected gameplay. They made a good story, and no one cared if the gameplay wasn't realistic in comparison. People didn't play DMC3 and say, "Oh, the gameplay's way too ridiculous for the story of the battle between brothers." No, because they knew the gameplay was fucking fun, and the story could do whatever it damn pleased. If the story wanted to have some more groundedness in it, because 3, despite being really goofy and wacky, did have some grounded moments in it. It was never harmed. The grounded moments were never like minimalized or grounded because the gameplay was too fun. The gameplay was too loose and wacky and unrealistic. It's the same issue I had with the new God of War, and the reason why I had that big old rant, I say big old rant, and the video was like 3 minutes long, but I had that issue with God of War because they prioritized realism over entertainment, so it was just a slugfest that I didn't enjoy. But it's more just trying to make conversation at this point, because this dungeon really sucks. You have to go back and forth a lot as well. It's a swampy environment. So swampy environments in any game, anyone can tell you aren't that fun. They're usually kind of boring. Like, they're not terrible, but they are just a bit like, ugh. So you have to go over, check a button for them to say the power's off, and then go back here to try and work out how to turn the power back on. and why couldn't we just flick it the first time we clicked on it? So I know what to do. I just tried to sequence break and the game was saying no.
Not.
Let's see here. In case of power failure, use backup generators. There's a key in the shed.
So where is this shed?
Well, if we knew where it was, we wouldn't be looking.
Which means it's gotta be somewhere we haven't looked yet.
And as soon as you click on this, the first batch of enemies spawn. The things worth mentioning whilst fighting at this point is you are essentially working as a team of 3, because Ignis will just kind of walk around like a fool, not knowing where he's going, like a deer in headlights, which you can't really blame him for because, you know, he can't see. He's having to relearn everything he knows, like work through all his new senses and everything like that, just so then he can try and survive in combat. So you're going to see him waddle around with a walking stick, try as hard as not to get into the way, and if he works out an enemy's right in front of him, then he will do a limping sweep in front of him, as you just saw there. Also, you cannot use Ignis's technique as well whilst you're at this point, which is weird, because I would have thought like they'd let you use regroup, because regroup is just him saying, alright, everyone on me. It's not him having to do anything, but all his other abilities actually require him doing things to enemies. Makes sense because you can't see them. And there are quite a lot of enemies here, to be fair. If you've been like following along in the main game, you have fought weaker versions of these enemies before, because there's a lot of them up by the Vesper pool, but this is the first time you have to fight them. Like, there's no way around it. Well, I say have to, you can still run ahead if you really want to, but you know what I mean. This is the first time they're like in your way encountered.
Hey, you should hang back.
Was I in the way?
No, you weren't. It's just...
And no one really knows how to approach Iggy on the matter, unfortunately. And this section up here especially sucks. Every time I've gone through this section of the game, these steps coming up, Iggy just can't climb. And I've heard people say, oh no, it's just realistic, it's blind, he's trying to go upstairs. But it's one of those things that you're going to see me get to the top despite only going at a very slow walking pace. And not only has Ignis failed to keep up and go up the steps, but neither has Gladio and Prompto. Their AI, for some stupid reason, just can't work their way up the stairs. I can't make it any more clear, I don't like this chapter. But you're going to see that I've even stopped for a second, and now I'm getting moaned at because I'm too far ahead. And so I'm sitting here like, alright, where are they then? It's because they've got stuck at a point on the stairs because their AI is too thick to find a way up. So I'm sitting here and I can see them doing circles. I can see Prompto. He's just stopped. His AI, for some stupid, idiotic reason, is just not functioning. So I walk ahead with the hope that it will either teleport me to them and reset their AI, or they will just fix their bloody problems. So I end up sitting here and watching it and just look. Move! Look at Prompto! They're just so far behind. And where's Iggy? Eventually we get into combat. If you're in combat, that's the only time the game doesn't care. So I just say, you know what, let's just get into a fight because then it won't matter. And eventually they'll work their way up. And then we end up having the opposite issue, because later on, spoilers, we're going to have to go back down those steps, and it's the same issue. We have to fight the bloody AI to get him down the stairs. It's so stupid. I don't know how they programmed, like what went wrong with the AI programming that they couldn't do the stairs. Like, I'm no designer, I'm no developer whatsoever, so I can't pretend to know anything on it. But I've seen other games not have that issue with AI going up bloody stairs. So what happens? And why wasn't it like one of the first things that was addressed? Because it's still, this has been over a year. Like, the game came out, like, it's been 2 years now, because the game came out like in November, I think, of 2016, and it's now 2018. Like, it's been a while. Come on.
All in full time, baby.
This enemy here is that it does actually hit pretty hard if you're not prepared for it. Thankfully, though, he is very slow as well. He's a traditional tanking enemy sort of thing, where he hits hard but doesn't really move at a rate where you're gonna get hit. So don't worry about it too much. Just keep a move on. And just remember that you are like out in Ignis. You're sort of like on a 0.5. You got 3.5. Sort of like when you had Iris on the team, and she wouldn't really participate in the fight. She would just help out on like critical strikes, making a kind of sort of a party member, but not really. Which is kind of painful because I really do miss having a team of 5. But it's more I just miss Iris because like that cutscene with Luna Freya, like when Luna Freya was doing her speech and it was all the people either listening to the radio or watching their TV, watching the speech, is not the last time you really see a lot of those characters, which is kind of just depressing. Like we'll see Iris again because there's a DLC later on where she will be in it, and that's all I'm gonna say. But there's a lot, but in the main game especially, that's the last time you see Iris, and you're just like, oh, okay. It's not the last time you see a few other faces, but that is the last time you see Iris in the main game, and it's a bit like, okay, fine, neat, sweet. And the episode Ignis is the last time you see Ravers for a while. He doesn't show up again for a little while. It's probably because he has a lot on his mind now as well.
Glad you're taking this seriously.
And that's the other thing I'm going to have a criticism on. I get the point of Gladio's character in this chapter, because he has to wake up some sense in essentially in Noctis to try and make him start acting like a real king, because he needs to. So desperately he needs to. But Gladio's just a dick for this chapter. It feels way too exaggerated and way too over the top, and he throws it at everyone who he feels like, and it's just like, shut up, Gladio. It's like there's a way of making a point without just being an asshole. Because I just feel like Gladio's character was very forced to be the way he is in this chapter. Like he shouldn't be this angry. Like he walked over on the train with the intent of starting something. In this whole chapter, he's always looking for a reason to nitpick and like pick apart everything you do. And he does the same with Prompto for no good reason. He even shoved him away during the train thing, like quite forcefully. And it's like stop it, Gladio. It's like no one cares. No one likes you. Well, I say that, Gladio has his own fans, and I like his gameplay style. I just think he's a dick in this chapter. I just think this chapter wasn't written as well as it could have been. I think it's the main thing that bugs me. Like, I get what they needed to have happen during this chapter,
Staying alive is enough.
and I get what character development they felt was a necessity to happen at this point in the game. But I feel like their way of going about it was too sudden, too forced, and too rushed. Especially with Gladiolus, with his attitude he has towards every living thing. But there's the shed over there, and one of the things if you're following the side quests you need to take a picture of. But as you're going to see, I'm going to go up to it, go to take a picture, the game will tell me do it in daytime, and then I'll just say stuff it, I'm not doing the side quest. I'm sure the reward's pretty good for doing it, but I just could not be bothered, because you go over here and it says take a picture of the shed, and it's like, okay. So I get the camera out, the manual camera, and I take a picture of the shed, and nothing happens. And so I go, okay. So I try it again, and that's when the game tells me, and I think I actually go into my menu and delete the pictures as well, because it's just a waste of pictures. Also, like, I find it a struggle to want to do the side quest, because it's more exploring this dungeon. Because, you know, you can see that in clear vision, right?
Can't see a thing. Guess I'll have to try again when it's light out.
We could see it! What are you on about? It's such a stupid requirement, so I go into my manual pictures and just delete them. It's like, okay, I am not bothering with this shit. And I also changed the quest back to the main quest. But over here is the shed key we need.
Found the key.
Or the generator key.
Irresponsible to leave it out in the open like that.
Almost like a way to be found.
Didn't you read the sign, Iggy? Not funny.
Prompto! I found it funny, Prompto, it's alright. I get what Prompto's trying to do in this, but he's trying to keep the morale up. It's why he's constantly making jokes, even though you can tell he's kind of awkward about it. And when we go to camp,
Exhausted.
he does show that he did take pictures anyway, and he's like, hey, do you want to see the pictures? And everyone's like, no, not really. I do feel for you, Prompto, I get it. we've all had that moment where everyone else is kind of down, so you know you're the one that has to kind of try and lift spirits up. Oh, this camp scene is also a perfect example of what I mean if Gladio's a dick. Because like, he'll help Iggy, if he's helping Iggy all nice as he what he is, and instead of sitting with the rest of the team, he's going to piss off and sit with his back to everyone. Like, he's going to go to sit, and then he's going to give like an evil look towards everyone, be all grumpy and frustrated, and then he's just going to get back up because he's a moody asshole, and then go walk away, and then sit on that box way over there, away from the rest of the team. It's like, what? There's no point, Gladio. It really isn't. You're just being an arsehole. But so you get a tin or you get cup noodles. I always recommend having the cup noodles because Gladio gets the bonus as well. Because Gladio loves cup noodles, and any food that a character loves, they get a bonus and guaranteed criticals from their technique. Which, to be fair, I haven't really mentioned it, so I should go into it. The more you use a technique, the higher the chance becomes of them getting their critical. Some of them don't cap as high as others, like the piercer shot that Prompto gets. If you max that out, it will give you the critical 99% of the time, making it pretty good to max out. But like 10 pierce, I think it's like 60% it caps out on. And some skills, like there's one that we'll be getting a hold of a little later on in this part actually, that will stay at 0%, so the only way to get a critical out of it is to get a food that character likes, which is why you'd be forgiven for not realizing there's a critical variant of the attack. But so you go through your pitches and then you start a new day. And I'll look at where we need to go. Now we have the generator key. We need to. There's 2 red environments surrounding the area, like red buttons by the looks of them, that you need to trigger, and then go back and then pull the big switch that turned on the big machine that we tried to turn on twice already that didn't have any chance with. Also, random street light down here. Like, alright. There's a couple random street lights down here. It's like, okay, who built these? Also, once again, despite only walking merrily, no one can keep up because no one can work out cliff edge. So I end up having to walk back again, and I think I end up cutting until the AI fixes its damn problem.
Don't push yourself.
Yeah, I cut until the Ignis until the Ignis. Wow, my English is really starting to fail me. You can tell I've been recording way too much. Until the team catch up with us, because this is the pace we're still working at because everyone else is slow as shit. To be fair, in a real life situation, the way the team have them spaced out quite evenly is a good way of doing it. It's a dangerous environment, so you need people to almost watch their backs. So you need the strongest sitting in the back, which is what Gladio's doing. Prompto and Ignis, the 2 by nature weakest at the front, and then team leader running the front of the pack sort of thing. And so it makes sense that the leadership's like alignment they've got, and there's enough space between them that if anything cuts in between, one of them can step in sort of thing. It's a genuine survival technique. Whether it's deliberate or not, God knows. I'm prepared to blame it on just the AI being really slow and not being able to keep up with each other, but they do space each other out sometimes. Right, oh, you see, even Ignis agrees with me. Let's make haste, let's run, let's go. And you're going to see me, like, in the last few minutes of this, get a little impatient and try and get away with jogging at a few moments. Like, you'll see me jog for a couple steps, then walk, then jog for a couple steps, then walk, to try and get away with it, and then I only stop when I get bitched at for it. But they've lined themselves up in that pattern again. And there's another enemy here, but this one you have to take on because you can't interact with the button because the enemy's in the zone of it. So you have to kill this thing before you can use it. Also worth mentioning, there's different enemies in this environment during the day than there is during the night, because now it's a Gigatoad when before it was that big scorpion thing. And the Gigatoad is a lot easier to deal with than the scorpion thing. To be fair, speaking of the techniques, there is another technique that might be worth your time because it is a good idea to get it, called Dawn Hammer for Gladiolus. Because Dawn Hammer is a prioritised single strike, but with Gladio's strength stat being far higher than everyone else's, it's a lot easier to hit 9,999. Like, Piercer's critical ignores defense, which is why that sometimes hits 9999.
Since when are there two of them?
Since the first one we interacted was not this one, Noctis. Get over yourself. And now I'm agreeing with Gladio. There's another streetlight. Seriously, like, the position of the streetlights are kind of weird. Like, you can see there's evidence that this used to be a big factory or something, and it was just enveloped by the swamp. So there was probably more civilization here than before. But the streetlights, some of them are just a bit like, okay. Also, once again, we're tackling the stairs. So this time, I wait until the entire team is with me at the stairs, then walk down it, and then wait for them to follow me to that point. And as you saw me go there, the team started walking the wrong way. Again. And so I just said, you know what, stuff it, I'm going to keep on going. And I turned the camera back, look at me, no, they're not following. Because they've gone the wrong way. I have to wait for the AI to fix themselves and then eventually move on. And then they get stuck on the stairs. Like, ugh. It's painful. These stairs in particular are just painful. Like the slow swamp in Katanica. This is what it is. And now I know what I'm going to call this part as well. Or the dragging swamp of Katanica. We'll get to it when we get to it. I haven't named this part yet. Because funnily enough, I don't think of the names of the parts when I'm doing all the editing. I only think of the name of the part when I'm about to upload it and I have to put a title for it. Which is why some of them are really generic and some of them are little puns or something like that. It just depends on what I think of in the moment, what I'm in the mood for, really. When I first started doing it in Bloodborne, it was because Reese recommended it to me. Reese said, why don't you have like labels or something along the lines in the video so people can tell easier what that video is when they watch them, instead of it being just part 2, part 3. And at first I was a little hesitant too. I didn't necessarily, like, I got this point, but I was a bit like, but I've already had this style. But eventually I kind of committed to it and went back over the first few Bloodborne videos and put titles on them, and then have continued with it ever since. And to be fair, now I wouldn't go without it, because I love having the little titles on to try and have a little bit of fun with it and say, okay, what can I put on it? What would be funny? What would work? My favourite one was that one part of Bloodborne where I ranted about Nintendo for a while, where Nintendo had pulled down the Samus Return remake, you know, the good version of the Samus Return remake, and pulled down the Pokemon Uranium project around the same time Sega was giving fans the power to just make their own full game with an official budget. And I was having a rant about why, like, literally Sega was becoming better than Nintendo, because Sega are actually doing the right thing by their fans and Nintendo are too stuck in their old ways to accept change. And so I called the video Sega Does What Nintendo Don't, as a reference to the old. And that one I was kind of chuffed with, because I just sat there and went, yeah, I got to. But then there's some of them that are more serious, so I don't want to give them punny titles. I want them to be serious. Like with episode Gladiolus and episode Ignis, I tried to give them more serious titles that are in reference to what's actually going on. And I'm probably going to be using more serious titles for a while now, because the plot's not going to have real, like, any comedic or light-hearted or easier moments for pretty much the rest of the game, really. Like, you got a couple parts like much later on, and that's it. Like, we're pretty much done for lightheartedness in this game that we can get away with. The closest thing to lighthearted you're going to get is my commentary. And anyone can tell you who's been watching this YouTube for a channel, I'm not the funniest person on this channel. Like, my sense of humour isn't always brilliant, and I kind of chuckle at way too much that isn't funny. Mostly because I'm, like, socially awkward as hell, but I enjoy doing this, so I carry on anyway. But now we've got the machine moved, we can finally persevere, and we are nearly done. We've got a cutscene coming up where Gladio's going to bitch at us again, because of course he is. And then we've pretty much just got the boss fight. This is me waiting for the team once again to catch up, because they're dragging behind, and it's like, ugh, it's going to take forever. But let's persevere.
Hold up. You sure you're ready for this? You got what it takes?
To do what?
To face your ancestors and convince them to lend you their strength. Got a long road ahead. Can you see this through? To the end?
Can and will. Whether I like it or not, I've got a duty to fulfill. As king.
You're damn right you do. Then that means you'd better start taking this seriously.
I mean, like, come on, Gladio, we showed resolve, we sound really kingly then, and then he's just turning around and saying, then you better start taking this seriously. Like, give us a break, for goodness sake, we're trying. The only good thing out of that talk is that we got a 50% vitality boost, aka a 50% defensive boost. Sort of like how we got that 50% strength boost last time Gladio had a bitch at us, back when we fought the Titan. But now we've passed that generator obstacle of moving the thing out of the way. As you can see on the minimap, we're now actually in the dungeon for real. But this actual main part of the dungeon is literally just the boss fight, which, by the way, is pretty cool. I will give the game credit. The boss fight at the end of this dungeon is a pretty cool fan service to long-time Final Fantasy fans, because it's an infamous normal enemy that was infamous because of how brutal and impossible to deal with and how many game overs it caused, especially in Final Fantasy IV. Final Fantasy IV, at least in my opinion, was the one that I remember these guys the most, because they were just instant kill game over machines, and we have to waddle around a little bit and actually investigate something until it'll let us do it. Even though I walked straight over to the exclamation point, we have to wait for the team to catch up for it to count.
Try thinking of others.
Try catching up. Because they can't go over a fence, I have to end up going over and then making them walk around. No, like, come on, come on! I'm jumping as well, like, come on! You tell I really lost any patience I had with this. And then they mentioned that there's something that looks like a royal tomb over there, so we should go check it out. And I think I saved the recording here just before I go fight the boss.
What is this?
Oh, no, I don't. Okay. You must be thinking of a different boss then, because there wasn't a cut. But as soon as you do that, the Malboro shows up. The Malboro is an infamous enemy in the franchise because of its signature attack, Bad Breath, which has the chance to inflict every single status condition in the game onto you, except instant kill ones. The reason why it's especially brutal in other Final Fantasy games and not so much this one is because, like, in Final Fantasy IV there was things like Toad, which would make it so you'd take extreme damage, Mini, so it would take extreme physical damage. There was Zombie, so you'd be immediately in a killable status from every attack. Poison, Paralysis, yeah, as you can tell. And Mini made it even harder for you to escape. It made it very unlikely for you to escape an encounter. And so as a whole it became a pain in the arse. But as you can see, Malboro's HP is pretty short. It's level 38, has a HP stat of only 35,000, a strength of 6,180, vitality of 135, and spirit of 127. It has a 20% weakness to greatswords, lances, machinery, and a 50% weakness to fire. The main gimmick of this fight is heavily scripted, and that's when it hits 0 HP so many times, it will keep on regenerating, and then you need to retreat to a certain point in the arena. Don't retreat out of the fight when they say retreat. Look for an arrow in the battle arena to retreat to. If you just leave the fight, the Malboro will just regenerate health. They want you to retreat to a specific spot in the actual battle. And his bad breath in this game can cause mollified, compromised, disenchanted, cursed, poison, and confusion. Essentially everything that lowers your stats and then takes health away and then makes it so you can hit your teammates. He also has Malboro brats that can spawn with him, which don't have bad breath, which is kind of weird to have a Malboro without a bad breath attack.
Noct, I have an idea.
And this is where Iggy is going to save the day and actually become useful in combat again. This is the new technique I was on about earlier in the part. Ignis now has the ability to sense what magic the enemy is weak to, called Libra Elementa, which Libra being a skill infamous for scanning enemy stats and weaknesses. You can now use it, Iggy can now use it to find out exactly what weaknesses an enemy has and then immediately capitalize on it. He will immediately bring out a fire, ice, or electric spell and use it. If they're not weak to anything, he'll pick one at random. But that's his effective stat, but that is the one that remains at 0%. The only way to get a critical version of it is to give Ignis food he likes. But I'm here to get the Royal Tomb, and this weapon is the one I've been hinting to is the one I'm going to be swapping out for quite a while. Because I love this royal weapon, it's a katana. Like, what more do you want? And its moveset is very handy, very quick, while still being quite damaging and powerful. So it's definitely worth using, and so it's the one I'll be using for quite a while now. There's still one more royal arm well, I say 2 because we didn't actually get the Oracle's trident. We didn't get Luna Freya's trident that she had there. We had it for a while in the fight against Leviathan, but we didn't get to keep it. But as we leave, we've got a cutscene.
A moment.
Is everything okay?
It bloody well isn't. And I won't suffer this pointless bickering in silence any longer. Let's be frank. My vision hasn't improved, and probably won't. Yet in spite of this, I would remain with you all. To the very end.
Sorry, but I object. War is a matter of life and death.
But we'll be there.
It's not about us looking out for him.
Well, then he should be free to choose.
There's more to it than just what he wants.
I know full well! I won't ask you to slow down. If I cannot keep up, I will bow out.
What says His Majesty?
Noct, you are king. One cannot lead by standing still. A king pushes onward, always, accepting the consequences and never looking back. Gladio, Noct will take his rightful place, but only once he's ready.
Have it your way. We're still taking a big risk. We better all be ready.
I love that scene, but what was with the lighting? Like, every time the camera angle changed, it had to reset the lighting so it was dark again for a second. I don't know if that's happened to other people or whether that was just my misfortune that it happened on the recording, but I couldn't help but be like, what there? Anyway, whilst we're here, all we need to do now to finish the chapter is head on the train, but there is a resting point, so I take it to save and end this rather long, overdrawn part that could have been done a lot quicker if we didn't have to work at a walking pace. But that being said, that cutscene, I do enjoy it. It's very simple but effective of saying Ignis going, look, I know the risk, I know what's going to happen, and I know what situation I'm in. But regardless of that, I am staying. And so Ignis will remain with us for the rest of the game, despite his weaknesses, despite his blindness. But that being said, next time on Final Fantasy 15, we'll go back on the train and start working to our next destination along the path, which is Tenebrae. But until then, you guys take care now.